Big thanks to Lit RPG Reads and, a shout out to Paul Bello, fine fellow. For inspiring today's deep dive, we're going to be taking a closer look at Warlock Eldritch Invocations. And that's inspired by Kira Mensa's article on Lit RPG Reads, D&D Eldritch Invocations, the ultimate guide for new and veteran Warlocks. I've always been fascinated by Warlocks, especially their invocations. I remember this one session where I was playing a Warlock who chose the Mask of Many Faces invocation, basically shape-shifting at will. It seems so cool. But I ended up spending most of the session disguised as the houseplant, just to eavesdrop on a meeting. Not exactly the most epic use of my powers.
Well, choosing the right invocations is key, isn't it? It's about more than just picking something that sounds cool. It's about understanding how those abilities can shape your character and their role in the party.
Exactly. So let's break down what makes invocations so special, and how they can take your Warlock from like a houseplant enthusiast to a true force of eldritch power.
The first thing to understand is how invocations differ from spells. While spells are fueled by those precious spell slots you have to manage carefully, invocations are always on abilities granted by your patron. Think of them as a constant, tangible link to that otherworldly power you've bargained for.
So it's like instead of just having a toolbox of spells you can use a few times a day, invocations are like having a set of tools permanently grafted onto your character, like a magical Swiss Army knife you can always rely on.
That's a great way to put it. And what's even cooler is the customization aspect. Invocations allow you to build a Warlock that reflects your unique playstyle and the nature of your pact. You're not just picking spells off a list. You're shaping your Warlock's very essence.
I love that. It really taps into that sense of customization and personal expression that makes tabletop RPGs so engaging. It's not just about being a generic spellcaster. It's about creating a character that feels truly yours. And speaking of making things yours, dear listener, imagine having access to certain abilities without ever having to worry about running out of uses. That's the beauty of invocations.
Exactly. It's like having a secret weapon that never runs out of ammo. And that's what makes this deep dive so valuable. Especially for you, dear listener. You're not just learning about mechanics. You're gaining insights into game design itself, understanding how these choices can shape a character's power and playstyle.
Okay. So we've established that invocations are awesome. But with so many options, where do you even begin? The article helpfully breaks down essential invocations for different levels. Let's start with those low-level must-haves. What are some standout options for new Warlocks just starting their Eldritch journey?
Well, we can't talk about low-level invocations without mentioning the classic Agonizing Blast. This deceptively simple invocation lets you add your charisma modifier to the damage of each Eldritch Blast beam.
Eldritch Blast, the bread and butter of many a Warlock. But adding your charisma modifier to each beam, it sounds like it could get pretty potent, especially as you level up and your charisma score increases.
Absolutely. It scales incredibly well, making Eldritch Blast a major damage source even without using any spell slots. At higher levels, we're talking about potentially adding 4 or 5 damage to each beam. And with Eldritch Blast firing multiple beams, that damage adds up quickly.
Okay, I'm starting to see why it's such a staple. It's that perfect blend of simplicity and effectiveness. Any other low-level essentials we should be aware of?
Another must-have, particularly for those who value survivability, is Armor of Shadows. This invocation allows you to cast mage armor at will without using a spell slot. Basically, you can always have that extra layer of magical protection.
So you're essentially walking around with a permanent shield spell, always ready to deflect those pesky arrows and claws. That seems like a huge advantage, especially for a class that's not known for its high armor class.
Exactly. It frees up your spell slots for other things and lets you focus on offense without worrying too much about getting taken down by a lucky hit. And since it doesn't require concentration, you can combine it with other defensive spells for even greater protection.
Now that's what I call tactical thinking. But we can't forget about those offensive options, right? Are there any early invocations that give Warlocks a leg up in combat, beyond just boosting their Eldritch Blast?
Well, Devil's Sight is an excellent choice, offering both offense and utility. This invocation lets you see perfectly in both magical and non-magical darkness up to 120 feet. Think of it like having built-in night vision goggles.
Ooh, that's sneaky. I'm already imagining all sorts of scenarios where that would be incredibly useful, like navigating dark dungeons, ambushing enemies in the shadows. It seems like it would open up a lot of tactical possibilities.
Absolutely. It's especially powerful when combined with the darkness spell. You can cast darkness shrouding an area in magical gloom that blinds your enemies, while you can see perfectly within it thanks to Devil's Sight. It's a classic Warlock combo, turning the battlefield to your advantage.
That's a brilliant example of how invocations can synergize with your spells, creating unique and potent combinations. It's not just about the individual abilities, it's about how they work together to amplify your Warlock's power.
Precisely. And as your Warlock gains levels, the options become even more diverse and exciting. But these three, Agonizing Blast, Armor of Shadows, and Devil's Sight, are fantastic choices for those early levels, providing a solid foundation for your Eldritch journey.
Great advice. It seems like even at lower levels, invocations can have a huge impact on your Warlock's effectiveness and playstyle. So what happens when we level up a bit? What kind of mid-level power-ups await us? Let's find out after a quick word from our sponsors.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we're exploring those Warlock Eldritch Invocations that can really make your character sing.
Now that we've laid the groundwork with those low-level essentials, I'm ready to see what kind of crazy stuff Warlocks can do once they've leveled up a bit. Let's talk mid-level invocations. What are some of the options that really stand out at this stage?
Well, if you're a fan of long-range engagements, Eldritch Spear is a game changer. Remember how we talked about Devil's Sight extending your vision in darkness to 120 feet? Eldritch Spear takes that concept and applies it to your Eldritch Blast, boosting its range to a whopping 300 feet.
300 feet. That's like the length of a football field. I'm picturing a Warlock perched on a rooftop raining down Eldritch blasts on unsuspecting enemies from across the city. It's like having a magical sniper rifle.
Exactly. It gives you incredible tactical flexibility, allowing you to engage enemies from a safe distance, pick off priority targets, or even provide cover fire for your allies. And since it's an invocation, you can use it as often as you like, turning your Warlock into a true artillery mage.
Okay, I'm sold on Eldritch Spear for those epic long-range battles. But what about when things get up close and personal, and you need to control the flow of combat? Any invocations that shine in those situations?
Absolutely. Mire the Mind is a fantastic option for Warlocks who want to dictate the pace of battle. This invocation lets you cast the slow spell once per long rest without using a spell slot. Now, some might think slow sounds a bit underwhelming, but trust me, it's incredibly powerful.
I'll admit, slow doesn't exactly scream Eldritch Might the way some of these other invocations do. But you've piqued my curiosity. Break down why it's so effective.
Slow is all about battlefield manipulation. It affects multiple enemies within a 40-foot radius, reducing their speed, limiting their actions, and imposing penalties on their attacks and dexterity saving throws. Essentially, it turns a group of nimble foes into lumbering, clumsy targets, making them much easier to deal with.
Okay, I'm starting to see the appeal. It's less about raw damage and more about turning the tide of battle in your favor, disrupting the enemy's plans and giving your party a significant edge. It's like slowing down time itself for your opponents, while your party remains unaffected.
Precisely. It's a fantastic tool for controlling the battlefield, especially when facing a large group of enemies or those who rely on speed and agility. And the fact that you can use it once per long rest without expending a spell slot makes it incredibly valuable.
All right, I'm convinced that slow is a powerhouse in disguise. But let's not forget about the fun factor, right? We're talking about Warlocks here, masters of the weird and unpredictable. What are some mid-level invocations that really showcase that sense of eldritch strangeness?
Oh, you're speaking my language now. For those who enjoy a bit of chaos and unpredictability, Sculptor of Flesh is a real treat. This invocation lets you cast the polymorph spell on yourself or others once per long rest, without using a spell slot.
Polymorph. Now that's what I'm talking about. The spell that can turn you into a giant ape, a ferocious tiger, or even a tiny harmless spider. The possibilities are endless. I remember one campaign where our party's druid used polymorph to turn our barbarian into a giant octopus. It was chaos, but hilarious chaos.
Your enthusiasm is infectious. And you're right, polymorph is incredibly versatile. It can be used for combat utility or even just for laughs. Imagine turning an enemy into a harmless squirrel, transforming yourself into a bird for scouting, or even using it to solve puzzles in creative ways.
I'm already brainstorming all the crazy things I could do as Sculptor of Flesh. Turn a foe into a chicken, then chase it around the battlefield. Disguise myself as a nobleman to infiltrate a fancy party. The potential for shenanigans is off the charts.
That's the beauty of it. It encourages you to think outside the box, using your imagination to find creative solutions to problems or just spice things up. It's a perfect example of how invocations can empower you to play your Warlock in a way that's both mechanically effective and thematically engaging.
This is why I love these deep dives. They remind us that D&D is more than just rolling dice and slaying monsters. It's about exploring possibilities, expressing your creativity, and having fun with the mechanics. So we've covered some awesome mid-level options. Eldritch Spear for long-range dominance, Mire the Mind for tactical control, and Sculptor of Flesh for pure, unadulterated weirdness. But I know things get even wilder at higher levels. What kind of reality-bending abilities await us when warlocks reach the pinnacle of their power?
Oh, you have no idea. We're talking about invocations that grant powers rivaling those of the gods themselves, abilities that can alter the very fabric of reality. But we'll have to save those for next time.
All right, we're back, and I am ready to have my mind blown by these high-level warlock invocations. You mentioned reality-bending abilities, powers rivaling the gods. I'm all ears.
Well, let's start with something that will literally elevate your Warlocks game. Ascendant Step. This invocation allows you to cast the Levitate spell at will without using a spell slot, or even requiring concentration.
Levitate at will. That sounds pretty amazing. But isn't it a bit basic for a high-level invocation? I was expecting something more dramatic. Maybe wings of shadows sprouting from your back, or the ability to teleport through the astral plane?
But you're underestimating the sheer versatility and tactical advantage of constant, effortless levitation. Imagine floating over traps and hazards, effortlessly scaling cliffs, or even hovering above the battlefield to rain down eldritch blasts from a safe vantage point.
Okay, I'm starting to see the appeal. It's not about flashy visuals. It's about having that constant tactical edge, always being able to reposition yourself for optimal advantage. It's like having a permanent high ground advantage no matter where you are.
Exactly. And remember, it's always on levitation. No need to worry about concentration checks or spell durations. It becomes an extension of your movement, allowing you to navigate the world in a way that most adventurers can only dream of.
Now that's what I call freedom of movement. But what about those warlocks who prefer a more direct approach, engaging enemies in close combat? Are there any high-level invocations that cater to those blade-wielding badasses?
Absolutely. For those who have chosen the Pact of the Blade. A pact boon that allows warlocks to summon a powerful weapon bound to their very essence. Life Drinker is a must-have. This invocation adds your charisma modifier to the damage rolls of your pact weapon.
So every time you swing your pact sword, axe, or whatever wicked weapon you've conjured, you're adding your force of personality to the attack. Sounds like a pretty potent way to channel your eldritch power.
It is deceptively powerful, especially when you consider that many warlocks. With their high charisma scores, we'll be adding a significant bonus to each attack. And since it applies to every attack, it can quickly add up over the course of a battle, turning your warlock into a true melee powerhouse.
I can almost hear the shrieks of my enemies as my pact blade, fueled by my eldritch might, cleaves through their defenses. But what about the more subtle mind-bending aspects of warlock magic? Are there any high-level invocations that allow warlocks to delve into the realms of perception and deception?
You're talking about Witch Sight, an invocation that grants you the ability to see through illusions, shape-shifting and transmutations within 30 feet. Imagine being able to pierce the veil of deception, instantly seeing through disguises and revealing the true forms of those who would seek to deceive you.
Wait a minute, so it's like having the true seeing spell active all the time. No need to cast it or worry about spell slots. That seems incredibly powerful, especially in campaigns with a lot of intrigue and deception.
Exactly. Witch Sight becomes an integral part of your perception, constantly filtering out magical illusions and revealing the truth behind them. Think of the advantage this would give you in political intrigue investigations, or even just navigating treacherous dungeons filled with illusory traps.
It's like having a built-in lie detector and illusion buster all rolled into one. I can see how Witch Sight would make a warlock invaluable in those situations where appearances can be deceiving. But we focused a lot on combat and utility. What about invocations that really showcase the unique flavor of a warlock's pact? Those abilities that reflect the bond between a warlock and their otherworldly patron.
You're right. Some invocations go beyond raw power and delve into the thematic heart of the warlock class. For warlocks who have chosen the Pact of the Tome, a pact that grants them a book filled with powerful rituals and secrets. Book of Ancient Secrets is a fantastic option.
Ooh, a book of forbidden knowledge. That sounds right up a warlock's alley. What kind of secrets does this Book of Ancient Secrets hold?
This invocation allows you to learn and cast any ritual spell you find, from any class list. Imagine having access to rituals from wizards, druids, clerics. The possibilities are endless.
So my warlock could learn to summon celestial creatures, speak with the dead, or even craft magic items. Suddenly my warlock isn't just a powerful spellcaster. They're a master of ritual magic, delving into the deepest mysteries of the arcane arts.
Precisely. It's about embodying that thirst for forbidden knowledge, that desire to push the boundaries of magic and explore the hidden corners of the multiverse. It's a perfect reflection of the Warlock's Pact, a constant reminder of the power they've gained through their bargain with an otherworldly entity.
I love how it reinforces that sense of mystery and forbidden knowledge that surrounds the Warlock class. But what about Warlocks who aren't as bookish? Are there any flavorful invocations that cater to different playstyles?
Of course. Consider Fiendish Vigor, an invocation that might seem simple at first glance, but has some interesting implications. It allows you to cast the False Life spell at will without expending a spell slot.
False Life, the spell that grants you temporary hit points. It seems a bit basic, especially for a high-level invocation. What makes it so special?
It's not about the raw power of the spell itself. It's about the consistency and thematic resonance. Imagine being able to constantly bolster your defenses, drawing on your patron's power to enhance your resilience. It's a subtle but powerful representation of the Warlock's pact, a constant reminder of the otherworldly forces that sustain them.
I see what you mean. It's not about big slashy effects. It's about that slow, steady burn of eldritch energy keeping you alive. It fits perfectly with the image of a warlock who has bargained with a devil or demon,
Right.
constantly pushing back against mortality through sheer force of will.
Exactly. And remember, it's always active. You're not reacting to damage. You're proactively reinforcing your defenses, always staying one step ahead of your enemies. It's a subtle but powerful way to express your warlock's connection to their patron.
All right, so we've got Book of Ancient Secrets for the knowledge-hungry warlocks and Fiendish Vigor for those who want to embody that constant struggle against death. But we can't forget about the darker side of warlock magic, right? Those curses, hexes, and general bad vibes that make warlocks so deliciously wicked. Any invocations that cater to that playstyle?
Oh, you're going to love Thief of Five Fates. This invocation allows you to cast the Bane spell once per long rest without using a spell slot.
Bane, the spell that makes everyone roll worse on their attacks and saving throws. I've always loved that spell. It's not about outright damage. It's about tilting the odds in your favor, sowing discord and misfortune among your enemies. Very fitting for a warlock.
Indeed. It's a perfect example of how even a seemingly minor effect can have a significant impact on the game, especially when used strategically. Imagine weakening a powerful enemy before a crucial battle, making them more susceptible to your allies' attacks or less likely to resist your spells.
It's like you're subtly manipulating fate itself, weaving threads of misfortune into the tapestry of your enemies' lives. It's not flashy, but it's incredibly effective and thematically perfect for a warlock who embraces their role as a harbinger of doom.
Exactly. And remember, it affects multiple targets, making it ideal for disrupting groups of enemies, or weakening key opponents before they can unleash their full power. It's a subtle but potent tool in the warlock's arsenal, perfect for those who prefer a more cunning and manipulative approach to combat.
Wow, this deep dive has been incredible. We've gone from the fundamentals of invocations to exploring a wide range of abilities, from the subtle to the spectacular. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of how invocations can shape a warlock's character and playstyle, allowing them to truly embrace their Eldritch Pact and become a force to be reckoned with.
It's been a pleasure exploring these fascinating mechanics with you. And remember, dear listener, this is just the beginning. The true joy of Eldritch Invocations lies in discovering the combinations that work best for you, experimenting with different playstyles, and creating a warlock that reflects your unique vision.
So as you embark on your own warlock adventures, think about the invocations that speak to you. What aspects of your patron's power do you want to embody? What kind of eldritch legacy will you carve into the world? The choices are yours, and the possibilities are endless. A huge thanks to Lit RPG Reads for that insightful article, and of course a shout out to Paul Bello, fine fellow, for suggesting this fascinating deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep experimenting, and keep embracing the weird and wonderful world of D&D.